think I was 10, I started to fundraise as much as I could with my school for little projects that I could support. I had a passion for photography, and I had taken these amazing photographs around the world. In 2 years, I had made $150,000, which I all donated to these projects for other organizations. I say that what I do now is the combination of every single thing I love.
Welcome to Seedstars podcast. Seedstars is an organization that aims to have an impact in emerging markets by supporting the local entrepreneurs, investing in their ventures, but also sharing their story globally because we really believe they are the true heroes. We'll be listening to them and other thought leaders and disruptors that are really shaping the future of tomorrow, and we hope that together we can build a sustainable impact.
Welcome to Seedstars podcast. Today I'm quite excited because I'm receiving a dear friend of Alize, who's Lucrezia, who's doing an amazing startup in the education sector in Africa. She has been covered on a lot of magazines, has been elected on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, and she also was named amongst the 100 most influential Italian women in technology, recognized by Wired, MIT, etc. I guess a very special guest that we're having today. Hello, Lucrezia. Can you maybe introduce yourself?
Hi, Pierre. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here with you today. My name is Lucrezia. I go by Lulu for anyone who can't pronounce my Italian name.
Yes.
I live in Nairobi, Kenya. As you said, I'm building an entertainment education company for children in Africa and the African diaspora. And it's been quite a journey so far. I look forward to telling you all about it.
So you've been, like I said, you've been covered in a lot of magazines. So you're now kind of famous somehow. How do you live this fame?
I don't know if I'm famous. I think as most entrepreneurs would say, it's always vanity metrics that don't really matter. It's obviously humbling and amazing every time press comes out and a further opportunity for people to know about our work. But for sure, the most satisfying part is being able to do what we do every day. My company and my work is my passion, so I feel extremely lucky to be working in something that I strongly believe in, that can change the world, and that I absolutely love.
And do you think that it helps you as well, like all these awards and covers that you have?
Yes, for sure. It's always opportunities to meet great people and great connections. It depends in the life cycle of a company. It is most important to do that. Sometimes it can be a distraction, but otherwise, we've met a lot of our investors and mentors at incredible events. So I'm picky with the ones I go to, but it's for sure opportunities at the right time.
It's a good one. How do you choose? You said you're picky. How do you choose your events and the places you go to?
How do I choose? Well, I think for me the most important part is the relevancy of where our company is at. So, for example, if we're thinking of distribution deals, the animation market is the best conference to go at that time, because that's where you meet all the potential broadcasters and distributors. If we're in the phase of fundraising, there's really good events like Founders Forum, and a few others where most of the top investors go to. So I think, it depends in the phase of the company you're at. There's events that are more important than others, depending on what you're trying to do.
So I think we can go just afterwards on what you do exactly, what's your business. But I think that's an interesting point that you're mentioning, because there might be some entrepreneurs that are trying to raise money and looking at what you're saying as kind of an advice. So for you, is this how you raised money, like through these different events that you attended, or is it personal network? Is it through the coverage that you had? How were you able to raise funding?
So initially, so it's it's all about building a network of people who believe in you, and the sooner that is, the better, because most investors love to follow the journey of an entrepreneur. And I've been very lucky with that, because a few of my mentors were not only the ones who then became investors, but also the ones who later introduced me to the VC funds that then ended up investing in our company. Those initial mentors I've met through a mix of events and personal connections. So I think at an very early stage, going to a few of these events and getting out there and talking to potential investors is a great way to start building that network. And then slowly, as you grow with your company, those initial kind of batch of supporters it's almost like your personal fan base. I like to call it, right? It's the ones that send an email, a really warm introduction, and that's the biggest validation you can have. So the sooner you can get those early supporters that buy into what you're doing and your long-term vision, and the easier then it is to expand that network and meet the right investors to raise around.
Yeah, that's very true. That's what we're trying to give as an advice to our entrepreneurs is trying to maintain that network, because it does take time, like you said, to build this relationship, and investors like us as well. Like when we're following these entrepreneurs sometimes for a couple of months, years before doing any investments. So I think I tend to agree with you. It's very important. And now you live in Kenya, right?
I live in Kenya, Nairobi, yes, and I found my place on earth. I was in London for the last 2 years. I'm Italian, so I've lived in Rome and then also in San Francisco for a while, and now I'm in Nairobi, and I absolutely adore it.
So do you see yourself settling for long term in Kenya, or?
Yeah, I'm really flexible. I'm a true millennial in that spirit, in which I I can make myself at home almost anywhere. I love being in Africa in an emerging economy, and kind of seeing really everything shaping after my eyes. It's almost being, in Asia 20 years ago, or just at the start of the .com era. It's really, everything is happening now, and as an entrepreneur, I really feel that every single tiny thing we do, we immediately see the impact, and we're amongst the first few to do it. So that feeling, I think, for an entrepreneur is incredible. Obviously more challenging, because you have less of successful examples to follow, and but I like to really understand and put connect the dots on things that are happening in trends and market opportunities, and what's worked elsewhere and how to implement it here. So it's almost a playground for an entrepreneur who has kind of that type of mindset. So yeah, it's incredible and a privilege to be here.
And you come from time to time you come back to Europe from time to time, right?
I do. I travel very often. So I come back to London mainly. Our investors are there, most of them, and then my family is in Italy, so I also travel to Italy often.
Yeah, and how is it for you? Because I was talking in another podcast about the fact that sometimes it's kind of schizophrenic for me to live in both worlds, like where I don't know, you take a plane and 5 or 6 hours away, it's so different, and the people are living so differently than what you would live. You would experiment in Europe, for example. Is it also something that you live, and how does it impact you?
Completely. I mean, you've said it. I've noticed many times when I go back to Italy, it's really or London, it's a different world. Especially when you see people just buying and buying and buying, and everywhere you go you spend money, and you think you need everything, and then here everything is a little bit more simple, and you have a lot more time. I feel that when I'm in Nairobi, just my days multiplicated. There is so much longer, and I have more time to do things, and Yeah, it is a big shift. But it's good to have both. I love both. I think it's part of me, and I think the reason why I'm on this journey and chose this life is because I have both sides of that. I love kind of living in an emerging economy and market and continent, and then at the same time having all the privileges of Europe and European countries as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll come back to your journey. It would be very interesting on how you made that decision actually to live there and or to basically create your company Kukua in Kenya. And can you tell us more actually about Kukua? What are you guys doing exactly? What's the purpose of the company?
Yes, I'd love to tell you more. So, Kukua is an entertainment education company, which we can also say edutainment. And we are creating the first African animated franchise for children. And we're creating it around a superhero character, a little girl called Super Sema. She is a superhero, but her powers are her creativity, her determination, and the use of STEM. And around this character and her story world, we're building an entire franchise. We started with apps that teach kids reading, writing, and math through games. And initially, we created this whole African world because we saw that there were no educational apps that represented Africa and that had locally relevant content. And after initial distribution, we figured out that one of the most exciting things for kids was that these characters that we had initially created looked like them, and so at the time we were trying to figure out a business model and a whole opportunity, and our hint was the fact that these characters were so much loved, and so we understood that the opportunity around the character IP is to build a whole franchise, which for us started with apps. It's now moving into an animated series, which I'll tell you more about. It's really exciting, we are in the midst of the production, and then that content creates the demand and the love for the characters in the story world, which then can be expanded through licensing and merchandising into toys and books and movies and experiences, all the way to maybe building the first theme parks, all Super Sema inspired around Africa. So yeah, and everything we do is educational and inspiring as well as entertaining. So that's how we blended the two things. And the start of this journey is, I think it's probably when I was really young. At the age of around 7, I started traveling in Africa with my family. I come from a big family with crazy cool parents who thought that me and my brothers and sisters had to see how different the world was from how we were growing up in Rome. And so literally every summer they would throw us in the middle of nowhere and to see how different the world was. And that for me, I think, looking back, was the biggest gift I could have ever received, because from a very young age I felt like that the world was so big and I wasn't the only one in it, and I was a small part of a privileged category, and immediately I was really inspired from everything that was different from me and how I was growing up, but at the same time felt that it was the same. The kids I was meeting in Africa and the schools looked just like me and the same aspirations and dreams. So immediately I from a very, very young age, I think I was 10, I started to fundraise as much as I could with my school for little projects that I could support. And then it turned into something more serious. At the age of 15, I started a small non-for-profit that was supporting educational projects in Africa. And I was being very entrepreneurial at the time. I would sell anything that I could make. So I had a passion for photography, and I had taken these amazing photographs around the world, and so I sold them I created an exhibition and sold these photographs, and then later a few other events. And in 2 years, I had made $150,000, which I all donated to these projects for other organizations. And then what happened was that two things. One, my other big passion, also since a very young age, was theater and acting. And so after high school, I went to drama school in Oxford in England. And at the same time, I was continuing with this nonprofit I had created. And soon after drama school, I wanted to have a bigger impact in what I was doing. So a few of my mentors suggested I moved to San Francisco to understand how technology could have a much wider impact into the work I was doing for education in Africa. So I moved to San Francisco. I worked in an accelerator for startups, and that was my opportunity to really meet incredible social entrepreneurs and understand the whole technology world and startup world. And obviously, San Francisco is the best bubble to be in when you're just exposed to that. And it was pretty life-changing. Soon after this period there, I applied to Singularity University, which was a game changer for me. Singularity University is all about using exponential technologies to have a huge impact in the world, and their motto is impact 1 billion people over the next 10 years. So that for me was what really pushed my thinking into a moonshot mindset. And after that, I was committed to not only dedicating my life to solving one of the biggest problems in the education space in Africa, but also to doing so in a way that it could be super scalable and impactful, and at the same time you can create $1 billion company around it. So that was my little moonshot. And here I am at it.
But that's extremely interesting. So you touch base on a lot of different topics here that I want to dig deeper in. One of them is the fact that you started at a very young age, actually, with a nonprofit, and then you've decided to go and launch Kukua, which is a for-profit company. Why doing this shift, actually? What was the rationale behind it?
Yeah, so I figured out that constantly having to rely on raising grants would have impacted the amount of impact I could have. It wasn't easy to find a solution to be both a for-profit and an impactful project, and it took quite some time to figure out the right combination of both. But basically, the easy answer to that is I think that the more successful a company is, and the more impact we can have, the better people we can hire, because there is so much talent out there, and we come from a generation of people who want to have both purpose jobs, but also have a successful job that makes them a lot of money. And I don't think the two cannot go in hand in hand. I think it's a challenging journey to go into, but it's so rewarding. I couldn't be doing anything else. I think for me, having both the entrepreneurial aspect and building a company like any other for-profit company, and at the same time knowing that everything we do is changing the world, is so rewarding.
Do you think it's more difficult, actually, to have both of these objectives at the same time?
I think it is a big challenge. But there are so many good things that come with it. First of all, I look at my team, and everyone is incredibly mission driven because of the impact. So you can create a culture that is beyond anything, because you're not only relying on making money and profits. That's a big part of it, and it's essential. But at the end of the day, what motivates our team to work overnight and really put their heart into every little thing they do is the fact that we're on a mission that can change the world, and they see the impact we have every day. And I think that's a big trend with people that I'm seeing when we hire people. It's they wanna know they're contributing to leaving a mark in this world. So it has helped a lot in attracting really good talent. And even with investors, I must say, and this is a whole new topic, but when we were raising a round, I didn't know in the beginning if it was going to be a mix of impact investors or just purely like VC, more normal investors, or a combination of both. And at the end of the day, we didn't have one fund that considered itself an impact investor because our business model made sense. But the fact that we were also doing something really important was just a mega plus to them, right? Because all of these people are human, and if they know they can invest in a company that not only kind of ticks the box of returns and everything, but also can be really impactful, then that's amazing. Who doesn't want that, right?
But education is, you tend to think that it's a public good. So making money out of education might be criticized also in one way or another. Is it also something that you faced, or not really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you how our business model works. But so for us, it was really challenging to come up with an education business model, because edtech is really hard to monetize. And so the way we address that is that our structure of our company is really the one of an entertainment company. So think of Disney. Disney has at its core character properties like Mickey Mouse or all the Disney princesses, and around these characters it creates hugely successful franchises that start with a movie or with a series, and then moves into toys and licensing opportunities, and that's how they make money. So for the children, you're not really selling them anything. Most of the money comes from licensing and merchandising. I'll give you an example. Peppa Pig, which is one of the most successful characters out there, and the most loved right now, was making $2 billion on annual revenue just from licensing and merchandising, and then got sold to Hasbro, which is a toy company, for $4 billion. This was last year. So that's our model, but our difference is everything we produce, our content, the toys, everything has an educational angle. So our animated series is highly inspiring and empowering, and I'd love to tell you more about it. And the toys that we'll be making will all be around STEM, and so they go hand in hand. We never have to choose whether it's education or if it's profit, and it's a consumer business.
Yeah, and so does it mean that it's free? So the education part and the entertainment part is free then for the children?
Yeah, so our content for now is mainly on YouTube. So we're really focusing on building a huge YouTube community and audience and fan base. We're also airing on the largest East Africa free-to-air TV channel. The way it works with TV channels is they pay you to put you on air. They pay for your content. They license your content, the rights to show your content. And then with toy companies, the model is that you make also a licensing deals, and they create a whole line of toys based out of your story world, and you get a percentage revenue from all the toys that are sold.
And to come back on the character, you've chosen a woman. Was it on purpose?
Yes, of course. I mean, the representation in media for women and for people of color is almost inexistent. So there's really an untapped opportunity over there, and we've seen that. For kids to see themselves represented positively on screen is a huge game changer. Once there's this quote that I love that says, if you see it, you can be it. Which is true, So if millions of girls around Africa fall in love with Super Sema and the story world, and see that she's a 10-year-old girl, she's just like them, we've specifically not made her into a magical superhero, so that her powers are not invented but are real. She has this secret lab on top of this house where she lives in, where she creates super cool tech inventions and robots and 3D printers, and she uses science, and she's fighting this heartless robot called Tobor, who's trying to steal all the knowledge from the people. So it's really like a kid power show representing Africa in a completely Afrofuturistic and aspirational way. The other thing we've seen is that Africa is always represented in shows through the lenses of poverty and corruption and all these negative aspects, which is not what I see, and what all the people that I think live here see. We see it as a super thriving, innovative, aspirational continent with full of young people that are extremely entrepreneurial and change makers and use technologies in really advanced ways, sometimes even more advanced than other places in the world. So this is the Africa that we're showing into our animated series, with the hope, that kids. The whole point is for kids to believe in themselves, right? After having the literacy, the numeracy skills that we teach through our apps, the next most important thing is for children to have self-belief, to know that they too can do it, that there's nothing they can't do. If we always represent these children as starving and in poverty, they'll never think that they have an opportunity at becoming the next tech entrepreneur or president or doctor or anything else they dream of. So giving them self-belief is crucial, and we think media and children's cartoons can play a huge role and travel really far.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's why we're trying to promote as much as possible and people like you and other entrepreneurs and other inspiring people that are launching things, so that people can hopefully take that as an example. And it seems to me, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but that character that you're doing is there is a bit of Lucrezia in this character. Seems like a very powerful, like taking risks, adventurous as well. Is that the case?
That's a huge compliment. If I were even a tiny bit of Super Sema, I would be very happy for myself. I think Super Sema was inspired by the real girls that we've met out there, who are just like her and who deserve to be represented that way. So we have another show on YouTube which is called Super Kids, in which we interview for 3 minutes super kids around Africa, and these are 6-year-old founders or 7-year-old coders or chess players or ballerinas and tiny chefs, and we tell their story and how amazing they are, just to show that the way we see the next generation of kids in Africa, we call it the superhero generation. They're totally going to take over this world, and we all need it, right? So yeah, Super Sema was inspired by them.
To come back on the gender topic, is it something that you felt yourself? Was it a challenge for you as a white woman entrepreneur in Africa somehow, or not at all? Like you didn't see any difference?
So I'm lucky, not at all. I do this very authentically. Sometimes I wish I was Black, but I've been putting myself as much as possible in their shoes to try and understand really the essence of the problem. And I think that's at the heart of every entrepreneur who works in an emerging market, is really using human-centered design approaches to really understand the problems and what type of solutions that can be implemented. And then most of our team is African, and actually super diverse. We have 1 million different backgrounds and come from so many different places. So I think our core strength here is diversity and looking at things from a diverse perspective. Like no one ever has the same opinion or has been brought up in the same way, and that's so valuable because it means we're always having different opportunities to look at things in a different way. And then in terms of, of being an entrepreneur, women, I was lucky. I never felt that. I grew up with a family that gave me a lot of confidence, and brothers and sisters that always supported me, and that really helped me kind of believing in myself, and mentors especially. I think, the one thing I always say that for women is harder is believing in oneself. And so, as you say, kind of role models really help us, because that's how we know that we too can do it, and we can do so at the highest possible standards. I remember when I was raising my first round, and it was my first time ever doing it, I was looking at tinier funds and this and that. And then one of my mentors said, here's a list of funds you should reach out to. These were all like the top funds out there. And I was like, okay. And inside of me, I knew that these were the right funds and the ones I wanted. And, but, it took someone to tell me, go pitch them, you're totally worth it, and this company is worth it. And so I did, and we did end up raising funds from top in class investors, which is incredible. And yeah, so
No, I think that's very interesting. We are trying to push also internally the women. We have one of our values is get out of your comfort zone, and usually that's what we're trying to do with all the women working for us, because they tend to be super shy somehow. And if, for example, if there is a new position coming up, they will be always coming up with an answer like, I don't know, maybe I'm not capable of. Whereas a man, with big ego would say, of course I can, etc. And it's always difficult as a manager to say, to take the route of the woman, because you would naturally go for the one that looks more confident. Doesn't mean more capable of. Usually it's even the contrary. So we try to push really the women to get out of their comfort zone. And I think that's also the way to go. I don't know if you would agree with that.
100%. And I do think the biggest thing you can do for a woman is telling her you believe in her already. That changes, years and years of unconfidence, and really gives you that push to break barriers, because we do have that confidence inside. It just needs to be unleashed. But even the most shy, because confidence comes from knowing what you're doing, and women do know what they do, because most of the times they wouldn't even get into it if they didn't have this excellence within them. And so sometimes it's just someone telling them it's okay to let that out, and then they'll go and grab it.
For sure, I fully agree. And do you think that it comes a bit from your parents or your relatives, because it seems like they open your eyes to a lot of the things, so they seem to be very open-minded. Is it coming from them, or I know, were there any other people that influenced you a bit as well?
No, very much from my parents and my family unit. Since I was very young, if we had guests at the dinner table, I could always speak and say my opinion, and I was asked my opinion. I was always supported in being different, and that's something my parents really valued and didn't mind. After high school, all of my friends were going to university, and my passion was acting and theater. So I told them I wanted to go to drama school, and I told them I wanted to go to the best drama school out there, and they supported that. They didn't mind that I wasn't doing university, and even more so, I didn't get into any drama schools on the first year, and I had applied to 7 of them and went through over 50 rounds of auditions. And so that full year, when everyone was starting university, I was at home. And that's when I started expanding my non-for-profit work and being really creative about what I was doing. And some other parents might have freaked out that you have, an 18-year-old, not really kind of wasting a year. But they trusted me that I was, making the most out of my time, that I really I felt responsible for that year, and I wasn't going to waste it, but I was just going to use it in a different way. And then I got into drama school the following year after reapplying. And so, I think it was very brave for them to follow through, and they always did so in a not in a like, they wanted to know that me or my brothers and sisters were working and doing things, but always with, as you said, a very open mind and trust in our abilities, and that meant so much to me.
Where does it come from? Are they entrepreneurs themselves, or is it cultural, or where does it come from?
No, they're not really entrepreneurs. They're just my superhero parents, and even my brothers and sisters. I must say they're, we're all really close, and having that family support, especially as an entrepreneur, you really need it. The first few $1,000s that I raised were from the salary bonus of my older brother. And yeah, and then each one of them has really helped in different ways throughout the entire journey. And when your older brother is trusting you that what you're doing is good, that feels pretty great. When you're a kid, you feel like, wow, okay, if he believes in this, then maybe I'm up to something. Those are your first supporters.
That's amazing. That's really amazing to have, I think, that crowd around you. It's extremely important, and all that mindset that you said, like you could even say what you can speak out in the dinners, etc. That's also something that we've seen in emerging markets. It's not necessarily the case. Culturally, it's completely different, where you need to basically shut up, listen, especially in the education sector, where you need to listen to what the professors are saying. For example, we were I can remember we were in Brazil, and I can remember talking to this guy that told me that the first time the professor asked him to challenge what he was saying was at university level. So you had to wait until university level to being asked to challenge what the professor was saying. So I think that's also something that we can be very lucky sometimes in some environments, or cultures. We are much more open to that, and I guess that has a big impact afterwards on how people behave in their career and personal life. So yeah, that was my take on that. Sorry.
I agree with that. I fully agree with that, and I feel very lucky to have had that.
Now, how did you end up in Kenya in the education sector? Because that's if you think about it, you wanted to be an actress first, so there's something happened. Yeah, okay. There was your nonprofit. I guess it was a big part of the influence. Was there otherwise a pivotal moment where you said, okay, but it's not acting that I want to do. It's basically helping children in Kenya. How I guess it's a journey, but was there a moment or someone or something that really made you take that decision?
Yeah, so this for me is the biggest connection of dots of my whole journey, and it really goes back to when I was 8 years old. I say that what I do now is the combination of every single thing I love, and I'm really lucky to have kind of crammed them all into one thing. Because if you think about it, the education part is there because we're making educational products. The entertainment angle is still there because we tell stories, and acting is about becoming a storyteller. My highly entrepreneurial spirit turned into the company that I'm building now, and the whole impact and Africa angle is our market. And therefore, all of these things, I don't know if it's immediately apparent to people who are listening to this for the first time, but definitely for me it was a way to have, not to be I didn't have to say no to all these passions. I now can really have them all into my everyday life and work, which is incredible. Of course, before getting to this, it took a while, and it took times in which I was only doing acting, and then I decided that I couldn't do that anymore, and then I decided to just focus on starting my company, and then now slowly, it all turned into one beautiful thing.
Excellent. And you're operating in an emerging market. It's very challenging. I've lived also myself in emerging markets. We're operating there, and and we know it's a very difficult environment. What's the most challenging part for you operating in these markets?
The most challenging part of working in an emerging market is, I think, I mean, for us, a specific one was distribution and understanding, how to reach as many people as possible. And the whole TV opportunity came into place, and the whole smartphone opportunity came into place a little bit afterwards. Because initially, our apps, for example, were iPad based, and we were thinking we had this utopic vision of all kids having iPads in school, and then we saw, what, the one thing that already all parents have, even in the low income communities, is smartphones. So we translated all of our content into apps that were specific for smartphones. And then even there, the challenges were, okay, how do you create an app that is light enough, that has the technical requirements that can work anywhere, even in the low income communities. So there was a little bit of technical challenges there. And then, understanding how do we scale this and how do we get this character and this, Super Sema out there. And that's when TV came into place. And we said, wow, TVs are still huge in Africa and even in the low income communities and everywhere. So we thought that was a big, distribution channel. And I think you have to be, the other thing with emerging economies is that they're evolving, so it's a long-term view. And I think convincing your investors about that long-term opportunity, for normal companies is 10 years. I say we're on a 50-year journey, and that's the company I want to create. And I, on the good side, on the positive side and note, you really have the opportunity to create a monopoly because it's untapped. There isn't a Disney of Africa. There isn't a Tencent of Africa. You have one in the US, in Europe, in China, in Asia, but in Africa, everything needs to be built. So if you have that kind of determination to see for the long run, and you are able to attract investors that believe in that. And I think I would say at the same time, have a short-term also strategy. For us, for example, we feel that the majority of our consumer products will most likely be sold in the US, in the African diaspora. So with the people who have the same exact problem, they lack content that, represents children and that looks like them. So I think that in the short term is super useful to have as a market opportunity. And then in the long run, I think the opportunity is in Africa.
It's funny because you have the default, I think, of all entrepreneurs. When I ask you about challenges, you talk to me about opportunities, and I think I get the same. So I can totally understand, but that's I think a really entrepreneurial mindset that you're showing here. And any big challenge that you faced in the past 4 years, where I don't know. Maybe cash flow issues or some other big challenges that you face where you were saying, okay, now that's the end, or I give up?
So at the start of Kukua's journey, we were running for a big prize. It was called the Global Learning XPrize, and it was a $10 million challenge to create literacy and numeracy apps that can function in Africa. And I started this journey with the highest of ambitions, and we worked so hard, and it was a 2-year challenge, and the beginning of the whole journey was set on winning this prize. And we went through so much, even to build the initial apps and product. We convinced a few investors who invested from an impact perspective. So the first money we raised were grants, although we were always a for-profit company. They put the money in on the basis that we would win this prize and have a massive impact in Africa and all of that. And by the end of it, there were a few teams, and we were definitely one of the potential winners from what we understood and kind of the general momentum around what we were building. And also, we had spent so much time understanding how kids were learning how to read and write and building 3 years of content for them, and gathering world literacy experts and top in class. So we really had that granular understanding of what we were doing and the problem we were solving, and we were sure we were going to win, or at least get into the top 5 and then the top 3. And after 2 years, on the day that we were going to get the results for the semifinals, I received the call from the director of the XPrize, and I answer the phone and I say, finally, the good news. And then he said, and I will never forget this, he said, Lucrezia, I don't know how to tell you this. I don't know what happened with the judges, but you weren't selected. And literally, my world crashed, and I wanted to run away and just hide, because we had made such a big deal of winning this prize to investors, to even for the mission of our company. This was huge. This was going to be the way to reach all kids and create more products, and everything was on that. And it crushed us, especially because we were not anticipating this in a million years. So obviously, communicating that to our team, to investors, and all of that was really, really hard. And that, to me, to date, was one of the hardest challenges. It also was the biggest opportunity of our company's life, because that's when I understood and kind of reflected on the company that I always had wanted to create, which was for-profit impact company, which needed a distribution strategy and a business model. So I think we had at the time 30K left on our bank account. And I took those, reduced all costs, everything, and took 6 months to come up with a plan to raise a seed round in 6 months' time from world-class investors, with the opportunity of being $1 billion company and having the biggest impact. And that's what we did. And if it wasn't for that prize, we would have never gone into the Disney of learning direction and what we're creating now. So it was, it turned into an opportunity.
Yeah, like every failure is a learning and an opportunity. I agree with you, and that's really amazing. That's a great story, by the way. I would love to discuss even more, and I think there's so many points that we haven't touched base on. But I wanted to just we have a few questions that we ask to our guests, and the first one is, what is the impact that you intend to have in the future? Is it something that you've maybe measured? Do you have a number or something?
So our ambition is to reach every single child and household in Africa through our TV series, animated series that's coming out, and then we will understand the impact of that by how many children watch that and how many children get converted to then the apps and the books and all the other products that will come out. The goal is to be the new Dora the Explorer that was for South America, but for Super Sema to be the most loved and inspiring character in Africa, and for her to become a role model for so many girls who can look up to her and envision their future. And especially kind of go through the whole life cycle of the franchise, and being able to then create toys and live experiences and shows, and for this to really be the brand in Africa for children.
That's very ambitious, but that's great, I think. And how many jobs did you create so far with the company?
So right now, and we are in the midst of an animated production. So we have storyboard artists, animators, and writers and producers who are on for this production, and hopefully for many more, because we just keep on going with creating content. But our team is roughly around 30, predominantly women. All of the senior management is women, and we are based between Nairobi, Italy, and the US.
Okay. And could you refer a book, a podcast, or a documentary that you think is worth sharing?
The last book I read always becomes my favorite in the world, but I think this one is really my favorite forever, and I will never change my mind. It's The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney. Well, he just stepped down after the most extraordinary career, and his lessons of leadership are absolutely invaluable. And anyone, not only in a media or entertainment company, but anywhere else, I think it's really worth reading, because the integrity and vision that he had from day one into shaping the last 20 years of Disney into, the most successful years of that company is amazing, and it's written really well. I read it in a day. So yeah, Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger is the book.
Okay, good to know. And what are your company values?
So our company values are, we hold 5 values. We are mission driven. We are relentlessly imaginative. We are magical. We are positive, and we have a growth mindset. Okay. And these are published on our website, and we go back to them every 6 months to make sure they still resonate, and we hold on to them. We feel that the most important part of building a company and a culture and a team that has a lot of chemistry and can survive challenges and be there for the long run is having a culture based on strong values that we all feel strongly about.
I couldn't agree more. We also came up with the values when we're about 50, and we had that need, and especially we are a remote company, so and that's now the glue of the whole group. I think that's what makes us I think somehow successful. So fully agree with you. What word, quote, or phrase best describes you?
My favorite word is unstoppable, because I think entrepreneurs need to be unstoppable, and I don't say that with pressure. I just say it in a way that there is always a way around things, and it is our job to find it.
As I told you, you are our hero, our Seedstars hero. Can you share with us one of your heroes?
Okay, one of my heroes is Oprah Winfrey. She is one of the most successful women out there. She's come from a tough background. She's built a media empire. She has all the sort of human qualities of a leader, but also just as a woman that I absolutely adore. Her empathy, her spirituality, and then she's an amazing storyteller. And she managed to get all the way to running one of the most successful media companies out there. So she's definitely my hero and my inspiration, and I know that she is as well for so many people in my company, and also the people, the same families and kids that we want to impact. We say if Super Sema was if Oprah Winfrey was a little girl, she was Super Sema, and so are so many other successful women of color who have achieved so much, like Serena Williams as well is amazing in a different field.
Thank you so much. Can I call you Lulu now? Thank you so much, Lucrezia, for your time today.
Thank you for listening to our hero's journey, and subscribe now for more stories on Seedstars podcast.